it's probably quite ironic that I'm standing here, given the way I look, and I'm here to talk about happiness. I probably look a particularly gruff, aggressive person, I would imagine. So bear with me as we go through. The other thing you have to bear with, which I also got into trouble for on Thursday, when they booked me into this, they said, oh, can you send us your PowerPoint presentation? And I said, no. And they said, well, why not? And I said, well, I haven't got one. And they were rather upset at that. They said, well, you have to send us a presentation. I said, well, I haven't got a presentation. And they said, well, can you make one? And I said, no. And again, they weren't happy. But they said, well, what are you going to talk about? And I said, well, wait and see. We'll figure it out when I get there, and we'll see what happens with the audience. So this might be a little bit different. I imagine you've been here this morning, and you've had what I call death by PowerPoint, I suppose. You've been sat here like good boys and girls, and someone's clicked through slides, and you've listened dutifully. Is that what's happened a fair chunk? Yeah, we'll try and stop that. I hate PowerPoint. I think it's horrible. So we might move things around and do things a little bit differently. And to that end, going back to olden times, I've even got some paper and pens and these wonderful technological devices, Post-it notes. You know what Post-it notes are, right? So what we'll do in a minute, not yet, no, madam, you can have that. I think we'll split you into 6 groups, if I've got enough paper. If I run out of paper at the moment, it'll be 5 groups. No, it's going to be 6 groups shortly, but don't worry about that. All I want you to do while I'm wandering around dishing out these Post-it notes is individually, before you get into your group, individually I'll dish out some Post-it notes and a pen. Oh, you got pens? You got pens? Do I need these things? You've all got a pen, I guess. Yeah? Anyone not with a pen? So I came prepared. It looks like I hadn't planned this, but honestly I've thought about it a little bit. I want you, the topic today is to talk about happiness and why that drives success. The word drive means a vehicle to assist success. But I think before we start talking about happiness and driving success, it's probably more important to clarify some key terms. So without talking to anybody, and I'll dish these out fairly quickly, can you just undo that for me? Could you undo that one? Could you undo that one? He looks bored, so you can be active undoing that. You can undo that, and just start dishing them around so everyone's got a Post-it note or 2. And then I want you to think very simply about what you think success is. What is success? And you have to define it in less than 4 words. You can't write a big essay. I'm not interested in a big essay about success. Just 4 words about what success means to you. You can't talk to somebody else. I don't want you cheating and getting the idea from somebody else about what success is. You've ripped them open? Great. There's a couple for you. And we've only got a minute or 2 to do this. Here we are. You'll need more of these in a minute. It's fine, there's loads. I've got loads of them. My school has unlimited resources of Post-it notes. Because none of us do PowerPoint. You've got about 10 seconds left. I said 1 minute. I milled around for a minute. We're nearly there, and then I'll pick on somebody. But strangely enough, will probably make you unhappy. What do you think success is? What's success to you? Just imagine you've got a 4-year-old child in front of you and they say, excuse me, sir, miss, what's success? Right, 5 seconds. Achieving a personal goal.
Happiness and satisfaction.
Success is happiness and satisfaction, okay.
Build self-esteem.
Build self-esteem.
Being skillful and positive.
Being skillful and positive.
Reaching your goal.
Reaching your goals.
Achievements.
Achievements. Someone's answering the phone very successfully.
No.
Under pressure now.
What was the question?
Look, the naughty girl at the back, we found one. We should move her to the front, shouldn't we, really, so she's paying attention. What's success?
Achieving your purpose.
Achieving, okay, but you copied from her, didn't you, because you heard her say it.
Attain your goals.
Attain your goals. We might touch on that a little bit in a moment, the notion of attainment versus achievement. I think we often use those terms interchangeably, but hopefully during the course of this we might try and clarify if there is in fact a difference between attainment and achievement. We often take them to mean the same thing. Apart from the naughty girl at the back who cheated, you all gave slightly different answers about what success is. Because success, I think, means different things to different people depending upon your personal circumstance and depending where you are. But the word achievement does tend to come up. The words goals tends to come up when we're talking about success. But then in a school, schools are terribly, terribly complicated places. And I think I dished out the 6 pieces of paper. And we're going to start with an art lesson. And what I want you to do is going to split up into 6 groups quickly. So this is group 1, you 3. This is group 2. This is group 3. Same on this side. 1, 2, 3. And you have to nominate a scribe. By scribe, I mean the person that's going to write. It's going to be a little bit of an art lesson as well. And the first thing I want the scribe to do, right? All I want the scribe to do initially is draw a big triangle in the middle of the piece of paper. Just draw a nice big triangle. Do you know what an equilateral triangle is? What's an equilateral triangle? Three-sided polygon, interior angles the same. But you don't have to do. If you want to draw a nice isosceles, that's fine. Right, look at that. Perfect. I'm glad it's not like drawing a circle. They say if you can draw a perfect circle, that you've got problems. With a perfect triangle, they don't say that, so you're okay. Now, I'm not going to stand here today and try and define what success is or what happiness is. If you go onto the internet, there's loads of people trying to figure out what happiness is, and nobody actually has yet, because that's quite a fluid thing as well, and it can change around over time. And if you go and read various motivation theories, they allude to it, and we might come on to that in a little while. I'm going to try and really narrow it down. What does happiness mean and look like, and how is it exhibited in the context of a school? Because I assume most of you work in schools. Is that correct, or have I got totally the wrong audience here? You do work in schools, don't you? Yeah, okay. If I had a load of bankers, it would be a very different conversation, but teachers, it's okay. Schools, as I said, are complicated beasts, particularly in an environment like Dubai, where frankly, most of the schools are also businesses. So to balance these competing demands is quite difficult. But in my view, in a school, to start with, you've got 3 major stakeholders within the school. That's why I asked you to draw a triangle. How many sides of the triangle got, or little pointy bits? 3. We're now going to try and identify the 3 key stakeholders within a school. Within your group. Within your group. You're not telling me, that's why I put you in groups. You're going to tell your group what you think the 3 key stakeholders are. Let's see if we can get some consensus. 1 minute, go. $30. Come on, scribe, you've got to have it written down. How are we doing?
Yeah.
Sorry, there's no right or wrong answer. You're looking at me like you're frightened. It's okay.
No, I'm waiting for you to give me feedback.
Right, have we done it? Okay. First group. So, can you tell me what you've written at the top of one of your points of the triangle? Oh, you tell me all 3. We'll just take one. Okay. On one corner, the group here suggests the students. Have you all got that?
Yes.
Children,
Yes.
pupils,
Yes.
kids,
Yes.
something like that?
Yes.
Well done. Get a Smartie. Well, sorry, I haven't got any Smarties. Kids, yeah, I think they're one corner of the triangle. Okay, we're all agreed? No dispute?
Yes.
Okay, another corner.
Teacher?
Teachers. In the current environment in which we work, I would argue teachers are quite a vital stakeholder within the educational process at present. That may change when we're long dead and buried, but for now, the educational systems around the world tends to be, we send kids to a building with some boxes in it, which are classrooms, we put teachers in front with some chairs and tables, probably a whiteboard, and you put them away for 6 or 7 hours. Might change, it is slowly changing, but broadly that's what happens. So teachers are another one. That leaves us with the last point. Parents. Parents. Fantastic. Parents are a vital part of this, aren't they? Do we agree?
Yes.
Has anybody got anything else apart from teachers, students, parents? Anyone disagree and got another point on their triangle? Management. Yeah. Oh, management are teachers, really. So we'll count them the same. Staff. Yeah, okay, well, where you've got teachers, this is very, very important. You've got a very good point. Put teachers/staff. Yeah? Because many people think schools are all about the teachers. Actually, it's probably not. It's probably more about the caretaker and the cleaner than your teachers. You had curriculum. We could argue about curriculum, but are they an actual stakeholder? When I meant a stakeholder, I meant a physical human being, somebody with an interest in the way the school functions and operates, the curriculum may or not be delivered by one of these three stakeholders. So who's in charge of delivering the curriculum? Teachers. So we come to curriculum that way. So we agree, we've not got any diversity. Kids, teachers, parents. You'll notice I said kids, plural. What I want you to do now, scribe, is draw a little circle in the middle of the triangle. Draw a little circle in the middle of the triangle. Look at that. Are you a maths teacher? It's fantastic. This guy is amazing. It's one of the best circles I've ever seen. Right, now I said kids, plural. What do you think that little circle in the middle of the triangle represents? Any ideas, any guesses?
Collaboration.
A child. No, that circle represents one individual child. Yeah, you can write child in it, or you can put a little smiley face in it if you want. But just remember, that's a child. Right, so that's one child. I gave you a clue because before I said children. And this is one individual child out of that bunch of children. We could, at any point, change it, but it gets a bit more complicated then if we start putting teachers in the triangle and parents in the triangle. So for today, we'll just concentrate on having the kids in it. Why do you think I emphasize the notion of an equilateral triangle as opposed to an isosceles or scalene triangle? And why do you think I asked you to put the child in it? That's a difficult question, so I'll give you a few seconds just to think about it. Get your answer correct, and then I'm going to ask you, because you look really confident. But you've got a few seconds to think. Okay, lady at the back, what have you got?
Like an equilateral triangle, which has all equal sides. So the teacher, the parents, and everybody involved in this one child all play an equal part in the well-being and the happiness of that child.
Right, I'm going. You can carry on. No. I'm away. That's the best. I couldn't have come up with an answer. It's great. Basically, what we're trying to say is those three stakeholder bodies are vitally and equally important in the development of that child. The problem comes about, and this is why I emphasised equilateral, is that sometimes these competing bodies have different desires or different goals, and they try and pull the triangle out of shape. From it being equilateral, they try and turn it into an isosceles triangle, and somehow the kid can then find himself bouncing outside of the triangle. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the goal is to try and keep the kid in the triangle, if you want. The other element which I've not come up with, which we'll talk about briefly, so we know the area in which we'll. I now want you to draw a big circle around the big triangle, because there are more stakeholders. Draw a big circle around the outside triangle. Yeah. Because now we've identified the kid, the little circle in the middle with the smiley face is the kid. The triangle with the constituent stakeholders is the school, the kids, the teachers, and the parents. And now we've sort of drawn a big circle around that. What do you think that might be? Yeah. Remember, I'm talking about stakeholders, people who've got a direct vested interest in the school. Sorry? Outside influences would be correct. I think outside influences will do. We can probably narrow it down because I think, again, I gave you a clue before when I talked about Dubai. What I'm thinking of is the owners of the organisation. The owners have a vested interest in the direct goings-on of the school. Does that make sense? So you've got the owners. We could keep drawing circles as we wanted. We could expand that. We could talk about community relations and draw a circle around the school. We could talk about the UAE government and draw a circle around the school. We could talk about the world in general and do a bigger circle around the school. But what I'm trying to get at is the school operates in an environment, and it's a complex dynamic place with these three competing groups struggling for power and attention, as it were. But the key thing is, I think someone said it, you've got to try and keep the kid at the heart of everything you do. And you've probably heard that term bandied around all the time, haven't you? I think they use words like, God, I can't remember, what did they say? Child-centered education, and make the child be the focus of everything. Children-centered education. You've all heard this. All sounds very nice. But how do we actually do it? And I firmly believe that the way we can actually do that is twofold. One, we try and simplify decision-making processes. Now that is remarkably difficult, and we'll come up with some examples of how I do it in context. But I think when you're making decisions, we tend to overthink things, don't we? Particularly teachers. Teachers are terrible for it. Teachers think a lot and make everything terribly, terribly complicated. And actually it's not. Mostly, if you can distill decisions down to, if I do this, is it going to be better for the children in my care? You're probably making a reasonably good decision, aren't you? And if you can truthfully answer for most decisions you make, yeah, this is for the good of the kids. This is for the good of the kids too. This is for the good of the kids too. What should you do? When you think about doing something and you've answered this is for the good of the kids, what should you do? Do it, or try and do it within the parameters within which you work. Does that make sense? If you're doing things and you think it's not for the good of the kids, where's your school going to end up? In a bit of a mess probably, because you're doing things for the wrong reasons, aren't you? Maybe because of outside pressures, and you've all experienced that. So I think that's one thing. Try and simplify decision making. And the second thing, which is really, really important, which is what I want to talk about today, when I'm talking about how we can drive success. I really believe in this happiness concept. I know it's big news all around Dubai, and we've got a happiness minister now, haven't we? And it's the year of happiness and all this. But it works. What I want you to think about now, I want you to imagine, who in the room's parents? Can you put your hands up if you've got kids? Loads, that's great. The ones who haven't got kids, this is going to be a tough ask for you, but the ones with kids should be a little bit easier. I want you to imagine you've left Dubai and you've moved to, let's say, pick a country. Sudan. You've moved to Sudan. There's a whole load of international schools to choose from in Sudan. In reality, there probably isn't, but let's imagine there is. There's 50 or 60 international schools. And you walk up with your little child in your hand. And me and him walk up to the school. And you meet the principal. Come on, sit down, that's fine. Come on, you can have a seat, it's fine, it's okay. And you meet the principal. What is the first question you should ask him and her? You're meeting the principal because you're debating where to put your child into that school. Okay, you're thinking, should I send my child to this school or should I not? That happens all the time in Dubai, doesn't it? Parents come, they go, it's a fluid, dynamic environment. And they come and they visit the school. What's the first question you should ask? You can discuss it in your group for 20 seconds, and then we'll see. The first question. Bear in mind, I'm assuming by first we're saying most important, yeah? The most important question you can think of. He's even done a lovely smiley face, hasn't he? He's great.
Science teacher.
Science. I was close with maths. Okay. So, let's see what we've got. So, what did you have?
What's so, our question. What's so special about the school that will be enrolling my child?
What is that one thing that separates
So good.
Okay, right. What's special about your school? What's the one thing that separates your school? Yeah, those sorts of things.
What do you do in terms of child well-being?
What do you do in terms of child well-being? Quick. Staff well-being, okay.
Will my child be safe?
Will my child be safe? Come on to that. Innovation. I guess if we carried on, and these are probably some of the answers you came up with, I would guess. What curriculum do you teach? Are you A-levels, IB, Indian curriculum? Did you come up with that? Where are your teachers from? How long have your teachers been teaching? How long's the school day? Have you got a swimming pool? Have you got a football pitch? All these things, do you think of those? Yeah. They're all a waste of time. They're all an utter waste of time. Some of the things you said are right about well-being and so on. But remember I talked about simple decision-making processes. The key thing you should ask, although it might have changed in light of recent events in America, unfortunately, and I'll come on to that. In my opinion, you should ask when you go to a school, first off, is will my child be happy if he or she comes to this school? Will my child be happy if they come here? And then they should be able to tell you, yes, he or she will. If they say no, he won't, don't send them to that school. So they should answer yes. And then they should be able to explain why. Because of all the things you were talking about. But the most important question initially is, will my child be happy? Now, we're not happy all of the time, and teenagers are probably happier less than most. But broadly speaking, if most children, most days, are getting up happy and excited about wanting to go to school, what's likely to happen over time? They'll be more successful. Remember I said happiness drives success? And they will achieve or attain. We'll come on to the whole achieve, attain thing in a minute. If kids are miserable and don't want to go to school and are unhappy, how likely are they to succeed? They're not going to. Do we all agree with that? Have we got any dissenters in the room? I think it's a fairly obvious concept, isn't it?
The child will not enjoy the environment.
Yeah, if a child doesn't enjoy it, they're not going to want to go. So that's the key thing. Will my kid be happy? It's very simple, isn't it? But remember, you're a parent, you've walked into the school. Now we're getting to the little complicated bits for educators. And this is what I really want you to think about in your groups, and maybe take, I'll give you a bit longer, I'll give you 5 minutes or so. I'm going to push for time. I thought I had an hour, but I've got 45 minutes. So we'll have to be a bit quick. But if you're all interested, we can continue on anyway and dispense with the coffee. I'm sure you'll survive. In your groups of 5 minutes, I want you to think of 2 things. And these are complicated. How does happiness exhibit itself in the school? You're walking around. How do you see it? How do you smell it? How do you know the kids are happy? That's part 1. And part 2, what systems or structures or mechanisms do you think the school should have in place to make sure those things are exhibited? Does that make sense as a general premise? So you're trying to answer 2 things. How does happiness exhibit itself? By leaving the room most times. No, she did tell me before. How does it exhibit itself? What would you see or touch or smell as you went around? Because we often say, and I've said this, when you go into schools, when the school inspection, have you been part of these inspections that you do here all the time? I guess you are. It's a KHDA what works thing, so you're familiar with the KHDA. When the inspectors set foot into your school, the good inspectors can more or less smell whether that school's a happy environment or not. Straight away, within those first 10 seconds or so, they can smell it. I can certainly smell it when I wander around schools all over the place, and parents can. That's what I'm after, this smell. I'm not saying you go around literally smelling. Yeah, I'm after a gut feeling type thing of how it exhibits itself. What would you expect to see in a happy school? And what are these people on the edge of the triangle? Who are the people on the triangle? Can you remember? No, you can't look. You have to remember. Yeah. Who are the people on the triangle? The 3 points. Yeah. Who? What are they doing to make sure it's a happy place? Does that make sense? Yeah. 5 minutes, go. What are the people, these 3 groups of people, and maybe the owners or the community, doing to make sure it's a happy place? If you don't want to say what you're doing, you could look at it the other way and say what they're not doing, maybe. That's another way of looking at it. Is it too loud? I told you I had a loud voice. Remember, no idea is a bad idea. Just put them down. We'll try and get through some of them. I'll try and gather up the pieces of paper later and see if technology will share them.
Sometimes people aren't they? But it's how you deal with them and to try and make them.
Go on, don't let me put you off. It's fine.
We've got children's staffing environment.
What is that? How do you make that happen? That's your school now. You're in charge. How are you going to make it a children-centered environment? It's one of these terms we bandy about all the time, isn't it? Tell me one thing you would do to make that happen.
Making children feel comfortable, especially in class.
Okay, how?
Having them involved like
Just 2 minutes left.
Seems that they have a choice. Even when they play the games and everything.
How are we doing? You okay? Is everybody taking part? Yeah? Okay, just 1 minute. I know I'm cheating with time. I'm not. There's no right and wrong answers to this, although in a minute I'm probably going to contradict that and say there is. But I'm just after your ideas. Right then, let's stop there. That's your 5 minutes. Now, hopefully now, it will start to get a little bit more interesting. Because this is now the meat on the bones. We sorted out the bones with the pretty pictures that you drew. So know the environment you're working in. And I posed a very simple question. You know, shouldn't happiness be the most important question a parent asks? You all agreed with that, didn't you? He doesn't. Miserable one here. He's like me. He's from the old school of thought. But I think we broadly agree with it. Even I do, much as it pains me to say so. The difficult question is, how do you smell it? And how do you make it happen? And most people don't get the how do you make it happen bit right. And these are the practical tools I want to give you. Some things that have worked for me about how you make this happen. Now, I will put a caveat on this before we start. And I don't want to get all maudlin. I don't want to delve into motivational theories or anything like that. Are you okay?
okay.
It's strange. That happens to me every day with women. I talk to them and I want to put a slight caveat upon it. Happiness is important, but there's one underlying thing to all of this that has to be in place, which I'm taking as a given. Although I did say, in light of recent events in the United States, maybe that's not a given. Adults and children need to feel safe and secure, right? I didn't mention that because I'm assuming you all know that. If an adult doesn't feel safe or secure, they're not terribly likely to be happy. Yeah, happiness is a higher level motivational thing that you need if you study any motivational theories. Yeah. So I'm assuming your basic needs of, like, you're not starving to death. You've got a school to go to with preferably a roof upon it, so you've got some shelter and you've got some clothes, and you feel safe and you're not in imminent danger of being shot or kidnapped, have all been sorted out, which enables you then to have a chance of being happy. Yeah, you can't be happy if the first bit's not happened. Does that make sense? So we won't delve into the whole safety and security and safeguarding type thing. That could be a whole issue on itself. I'm assuming that that is there and in place and that school has security processes, security personnel, has a roof, has a safeguarding policy, has a child protection officer, all these things, okay? So the basic foundations are there. to enable happiness to exist. Do you agree with that as a premise? I know I didn't specify it because I thought it was common. How does happiness exhibit itself in a school? You thought I was going to ask him. Did you see what happened then? When I went like this, you went, oh, God. And then I came to her, oh. How do you see it in a school? What do you see? Okay.
Positive education.
Positive education. Okay, what does that look like?
Every month we use this.
No, I'm not asking you what you do every month. I'm asking you what it looks like. What does positive education look like?
They should, all of them should be approachable, the teachers.
Approachable. I think that's an important thing. We'll come on to that. Hold on to that word.
Teacher should be smiling all the time.
Smiling. Yes. Remember, the first thing I came in when I said, it's with a bitter sense of irony that I'm standing here because I look miserable. I do attempt to smile. Let's test this theory. Morning.
Hi, good morning.
Look, she smiled. I know that you don't get this, but now we're going to talk about how it exhibits itself. As human beings generally, it's a fairly good indicator that someone's happy if they're smiling. Remember, we've got teenagers. Some teenagers walk around like this. Right? We don't want that, but we know that's not good. So how do we stop that? And now we're coming on to practical things. So we want people to smile in the building. And I said people, particularly young children at the centre of this, we want them to be smiling, so they're exhibiting happiness, so we know they're happy. So what can you do now in this one simple thing to try and make people smile a bit more? I just did one of them, so you should be able to tell me.
I give them...
No, what did I just do? I said hello.
Hello, yes.
Teachers often get this wrong. Schools often get this wrong. And this is the most important thing, in my opinion. I insist that every member of my staff says hello to the kids. I insist they say hello to the security guard when they walk into the building. I insist they say hello to the cleaner. And guess what these people do? They say hello back. And what happens when a teenager doesn't say hello back? There's a consequence, because we ensure the children say hello to each other. And then you can generally have a reasonably pleasant atmosphere in the school. It's going to go wrong from time to time, as I said. But generally, if people are saying hello, good morning, I'm not talking around walking like the Stepwood Wives, like this, smiling all the time, but generally trying to be happy and saying hello helps. Okay, anything else we can do to check that people are smiling? I demonstrated it a minute ago with the teenagers. What can you do to check that people are smiling?
You can praise the person,
No, that might make them smile. Remember, assuming they're already smiling. You can make them smile more, I guess, by praising them, but what can you do to check that someone's smiling? It's very simple. Look at them. Think about this. This is really obvious. Yeah.
Handshake.
Eye contact. High fives, anything like this. You've got to be careful in an Islamic context here, so bear that in mind. But eye contact's vitally important, and that builds the atmosphere within the school. Remember I talked about the teenagers walking like this. If you've got your teachers walking like that as well, and they pass by in the corridor, how happy is the school? Would you want to send your children to that school? Now, let's be honest. This is the honest bit, hand on heart bit. How many of you teachers have taught in room 1 from 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock, and then in room 2 from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and you've walked down the corridor like that because you're in such a rush to get to your lesson, and you've not looked or smiled at a single student? Come on, we all do it. Admit it. Always? I'm going to come to your school. Because we tend to be obsessed with ourselves, and then we don't do it. But again, if teachers are interacting with students in corridors and talking to them and saying hello and smiling, and kids are looking up instead of at the floor, what's likely not to happen?
Even being a kindergarten teacher, you can hug them, you can give high five in the
You can have a singing competition with them.
Yeah, anything.
He does that, I know.
Try to get them engaged in this transition time, break times, lunch times. How many of you do duties at your school? Do you do duties at break at lunch?
Yes.
I guess so. How many of you have seen a teacher who's on break duty? Yeah? We've seen it. You've all seen it. You've probably done it. Be honest. If you're on duty with kids at break, it shouldn't be called a duty. It should be called a pleasure. Because what you should be doing is talking to the kids. Talking to them, figuring out what makes them tick, what's going along in their little heads, what's happening at home, getting to know them as a person. And that, believe it or not, makes your duty or pleasure go a bit quicker than standing there leaning against the wall. And if all the teachers are doing that all the time, you can quickly see how this spills into a positive environment. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, remember at the start, I said I'm a simple man. So these are all simple things. Yes?
I am just after the talk on this about positive education, and one of the things that this institute taught us was that instead of having policies that are called duty, literally changing into your policy to a pleasure or time to talk to the kids.
Yeah, I must be doing something right then.
Because that's the whole point.
Yeah, it is. We tend...
language so people look at it in a different way.
You're absolutely correct. So, again, I've only got 45 minutes, so we can't discuss all these things. But you're right. The notion of language and positive language and praise, as you said, are all important. Yes. I'm just trying to set the fundamentals before we go into in-depth. Because if you've not got these fundamentals right, you can't build your house. Your house will fall down. So what you want to make sure teachers are doing is saying hello and greeting kids, and kids are saying hello and greeting teachers back, and they're looking at each other occasionally. And teachers who are doing duties have turned them into pleasures. That makes it a positive place. And there's also a knock-on effect to this, because if the teachers aren't walking along looking at the floor, what are they doing? They're looking at the kids, presumably. And if the kids, and whether we like it or not, and I'm British, I believe in rigour and rules, if the kids know the teachers are watching them, what are they likely not to do? Misbehave. They're not going to cause problems. If you're walking along watching, let's say you two are two teenage boys and you're just about to start fighting, as teenage boys do, and I'm walking along and I'm looking at you and I'm taking notice, what are you likely not to do? Fight. Yeah. Whereas if I'm walking along like this and I don't even notice you or see you, you're likely to cause problems. So this positive environment is very, very important, but it's all based upon simple fundamentals. Does that make sense as a premise? Okay. What idea did you have?
I'm sorry?
Before, remember we asked you to write some things down about what a happy school looks like and how it...
We put a circle on the center.
Yeah, but we had 5 minutes to talk about what does happiness look like in a school when you walk in.
Other than making the child... You want to ask me as a parent or as a teacher?
No, as the group. You're the spokesperson now.
Staff being happy as well as not.
But how? Okay, so staff need to be happy. But how do you make staff happy? Just give them all more holidays. Yeah. Let's make teachers work even less hours than they do. Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Probably not going to help the kids. Remember, the kids are at the middle of all this.
Appreciation words for teachers from the management.
One thing. You're absolutely right. I'll come on to salary in a minute. Salary is a key thing, but probably not as key as you think. It's always struck me as odd, and I've never quite managed to get this right, I confess. Is in the school environment in which we work, we spend a lot of time praising kids, don't we? Saying they've done well and you work really hard. And we even give kids certificates, don't we? Yeah? Because it works. Makes the kids feel good about themselves, makes them work harder, makes them achieve. Do we agree? Yes. Question. When was the last time one of you got given a certificate by your principal at your school? How many, or I'll ask it a different way, how many of you within the last week have been given a certificate from your principal to say how amazing you are?
No.
One. He's amazing, this guy. Oh, he's given them. I assume you're a principal then. We should do that more with staff. I emphasize staff, not just teachers. Your cleaner, your caretaker. Appreciate your staff. Tell them they're doing well. And again, I don't want to labour the point, but if you just go into the internet and talk about staff appreciation, you'll get a whole host of lists of thousands of things you can do to appreciate your staff better. Millions of things. Putting post-it notes on the computer screens, sending them a little postcard saying thank you. One that works really well for kids in part of my wider thing is praising kids. So telling the kids you praise them, in my old days, I'm old, I'm maybe not the oldest in the room, but I'm close. Send a postcard home saying that little Johnny did amazingly well in maths. Don't tell little Johnny. Postcard arrives through the letterbox at breakfast, Dad picks it up. Imagine what happens next. Positive. We don't do enough of it. We're good at doing it with kids, with teachers, that's what you're trained to do. We're terrible at doing it with adults. We do not praise adults enough and tell them they're doing hard jobs very well most of the time. We tend to go the other way. We spend all our time telling adults off for not doing their jobs properly, which actually is exactly what we're trained not to do with kids. So it always strikes me as odd that we do it that way with adults. So we should try to praise people a bit more so they feel appreciated. Why? Because if the teachers are happy, they're going to work harder with the kids and the kids are going to do better. Why? Because if your teachers are happy, they're not going to leave. They're not going to go from my school, which is Raffles World Academy, to your school, which is... Yeah, because his school's horrible and mine's really nice. They're all going to stay with me. Whereas if my school was horrible and his was nice, they'd all go and join him. So it helps staff retention as well, doesn't it? Interesting one here, and this is always difficult. Money. It's a tricky one with teachers. It's a tricky one all around the world. But trust me, money and happiness, I think the Beatles talked about it, or was that Can't Buy Me Love or something? We'll say love, happiness. Money can't buy you happiness. Money only motivates you so far. Once you've got these basic needs in place, and you've got your stuff, what you need, the influencing factors of money tend to diminish. Now, I'm not talking about someone who's living on $1 a day in the Sudan. Yeah, they need a bit more money. But most teachers, most of the time, compared to most of the people in the world, are doing pretty well. So money won't keep motivating them. It will if their basic needs are not being met, and if they feel a disparity or inequality, then money becomes more important. But just paying people more won't get you better results with the kids. You'll get a much greater benefit from it, from appreciating teachers, raising their self-esteem, giving them confidence, giving them tools, giving them training. All these things are better than just paying your teachers more. I bet all the teachers in the room disagree with me now, don't you? But it's honestly true. It really is. And you can invest the money. Professional development opportunities for teachers. Invest in the teacher so they feel they're getting opportunities to grow and develop. That's a tricky one, professional development, because should the professional development you deliver for teachers be for the benefit of the teachers or for the benefit of the students? Yeah, tricky. In my opinion, they should try and dovetail into each other. To take it in extremis, I would never send a teacher to go and learn to be an astronaut. Yeah? He comes in with his PD form, he's filled it all in, I want to go off and do astronaut training. I'm not going to give him that, because it's not going to help the kids in the classroom. So the two have got to work together. But I think the focus should be more on, if I send this teacher on the training, it's going to do what? Remember, what did we say about decision making before? What do we say about decision making? When you make decisions? Yeah, so if I send this teacher on the training, it's going to be good for the students. That's how you should start thinking about your professional development. And it's how you should start thinking about everything, really. Is it going to be good for the students? No point sending this teacher off, because as a manager, you've got cover issues, supply issues, new adult in the classroom issues. So the training's got to be pretty good, and the kids have got to get something out of it. Does that make sense? Okay, next group. We're running out of time. I do apologise. Have you forgotten? Okay, any more here? Okay, we're running out. Just one more thing I wanted to talk on very importantly was the other side of the triangle, the parents. No one mentioned it. We often neglect parents in schools. My view is, and I have no empirical evidence for this, but the more involved a parent is in the education of their child, the better the child does. Really is as simple as that. And it's always struck me as odd at schools that parents come along with the kindergarten kids, don't they? And they loiter around, staring through the window like this. And then when the kid gets to 18, and it's the business end of things, and you've got your under-18 football match, how many parents do you see? None. Maybe one man and a dog. You certainly don't see 200 parents rocking up, do you? I think it should be the other way around. These little kids will look after themselves pretty much if they can get to school. Kids need your support and advice all the way through their educational journey. And parents need to be involved right the way up until they've left school and maybe even gone on to university. So try and stay engaged. And what we do at our school to do that is we, for want of a better word, keep our friends close and our enemies closer, he says. Get the parents involved in school. Talk to them, discuss things with them. Nip problems in the bud before they come along. When the parent comes in the morning and drops little Johnny off, What should you as a principal or a teacher do first thing?
First thing for them.
No, we said it before. What should you do? Smile and say hello. And then guess what the parent's probably going to do? Say hello back. And then you may be able to talk to the parent, and you'll find out he does this or he does that. He's an architect or he's an astronaut. And the week after, you can invite him, I'm emphasizing him because we get a lot of mums involved in schools, invite him in to come and give a careers talk about how fantastic it is to be an astronaut. The kids get a role model. You can also probably nip things in the bud. He will say, oh, my little Johnny's not been doing very well in maths. And you can fix it and pick it up and solve it quickly. Because the pattern with parents tends to be, and I apologize, I'll finish in 2 minutes, I promise. The pattern with parents tends to be that little Johnny or Isabella goes home and says, oh, I've been picked on at school, or my maths teacher doesn't understand me. No. Most parents, although it's changing now, most parents ignore it at that point. I'll get on with it, it's fine. Little Johnny and Isabella comes home and says it a second time, and the parent just gets some alarm bells ringing now. But probably still does nothing about it. Thinks school's okay, I trust the school, it's a nice, friendly, happy place. Happens the third time, the parent thinks, right, I'm going to go down to that school and sort this out. And the parent rocks up to school, bowls into the principal's office or the head of grade office or whatever structure you have. And that's a difficult conversation then, because the parent's angry, the parent's upset, the parent's emotionally invested in it. And the natural temptation for principals and school leaders is to do what when this parent comes in shouting at them? Shout back. You tend to have this argument. That's the worst possible thing you can do. The most valuable management tool I've got in my office, I kid you not, is a box of tissues. Because often, parents just want to be heard. And without a word of a lie, I have had conversations with parents where I've not said a word, and they've come in incredibly angry, incredibly upset. But even my wife can't stay angry for 3 hours. Eventually, they calm down. And when they calm down, often they get upset. And I've seen men cry. And then you give them the tissues. And they dry their eyes, and they start to reflect, and they think. And honestly, twice in my career, I've had someone come in and say, oh, I feel better now, and they've just left. And nothing's happened, they've just gone, and they felt better. It's great, they've got it off the chest. They've got the confidence and trust that the school will do something about their issues. And you move on. But it all started from this hello, good morning, how are you in the conversation? How were your holidays? How's Isabella doing? How's Johnny doing? Then he doesn't come barreling into your office like an angry maniac. You nip things in the bud. So solving problems before they become problems is key. I talk about acorns and oak trees. If you can solve a problem like it's an acorn, it's pretty easy, although I've got a bad back, to pick up an acorn and throw it away. Once it's become an oak tree, you're not going to get that oak tree up. It's a big problem. So fix things when they're acorns. And you can do that by smiling and saying hello to people. I know you don't believe me, but it works. The other thing I very strongly advise you not to get involved in, which we all do, which I tell my middle and senior leaders all the time, and if it was up to me, I'd throw these things out. These computers and these PowerPoints, I get rid of them. How many classrooms have you been into where the teacher sat behind the computer like that? I know we're all into student-centered learning and the teacher's doing that, but I can bet you or bet you not, they're just checking their email or their Facebook or their Twitter. They're not interacting with the kids. And I've had days where I've just unplugged them all and said, get on with teaching, teach some stuff. Don't mess around checking your emails. And I've also tried to refine the communication structures at my school. Because nowadays in work, what tends to happen is, remember you've got this angry parent, 3 conversations with kid, angry. Sometimes instead of coming, they write you an email. Big long email, and they write it. And then the teacher writes an email back. Guess what they get back next? An even longer email. And then often, what does that email happen? I've seen this, and you have. The parent then writes, see my comments in blue, or red, or green, yeah? And then the teacher writes back, yeah, but see mine in purple. And then suddenly you've got this rainbow of emails bouncing back and forth over a couple of days. Question, how much has been solved? Nothing. So what should you do? Teacher writes you an email, blah, blah, blah. What should you respond?
Let's have a meeting.
Yeah, well before that, what should you write?
I'm really sorry
Yeah.
to hear this.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Many thanks for your email. Please pop into school at your convenience to discuss this. Kind regards. And then guess what happens? They come to school. Guess what happens next? You've got your tissues ready. You sit, you listen, you talk. Problem solved. Then you get the parents happy. Once you've got these things going along and they're happening regularly, your school will be a happier place. Then you can start building into all the other things I was talking about, providing opportunities for children, careers counselling for children, getting dads to come into school to act as role models, maybe having a teacher-parents football match, maybe having a quiz night, all these things to build a spirit of community, a circle that went around it. Then when you go to the owners of the school and you say, I need more money, which all the principals do in Dubai, the owners are likely to give it to you because they've been into the school and they see what a nice, happy place it is. Because your kids aren't leaving, your teachers aren't leaving, so they've saved those recruitment costs. So if you've got decent owners, they're likely to reinvest in the school. I'm speaking quick because I'm running out of time. Just try to remember these simple things. I know you probably came here thinking you get loads of educational wisdom. I'm not very wise. At school, smile at each other. Try to encourage your children to say hello, good morning. Maybe even get them to say please and thank you sometimes as well. That would be nice. Maybe get them to hold doors open for adults, or better still, adults to hold doors open for children. Make sure the cleaners feel as valued as your teachers. Make sure you look after the caretaker, because schools are about a whole community of workers out there. Make sure you get the parents engaged and nip problems in the bud before they happen, and your school will be a happier place. And if it's happier, your school will be what? More successful. We didn't get onto achievement or attainment, but I'll finish off by saying I believe achievement is attainment plus progress. I'll leave you to think about that as you exit the room. Thank you very much.